Hi, I'm Finley. I'm 28 years old and work as a physical therapist downtown. Most people think my job's about helping folks recover from injuries, but honestly, I'm also trying to figure out how to fix myself. You're shaking again, Jake said last Tuesday morning, watching me struggle with my coffee cup. We were sitting in our kitchen, and I could see the worry lines creeping across his forehead. It's just the tremors. They come and go. This is getting worse, Finley. When's the last time you slept through the night without those headaches? I couldn't answer him because the truth was ugly. These weren't normal health problems. They started when I was 12, right after my parents Margaret and Robert signed me up for what they called helping medical research. Remember how I told you about those medical studies my parents put me in as a kid? The ones that paid your family money? Yeah, those. I think they really messed me up. Jake reached across the table and grabbed my hand. What exactly did they do to you? I pulled up my sleeve and showed him the small scars running along my forearm. Blood draws twice a week, experimental medications, some kind of nerve testing that left me with permanent damage. Your parents let doctors experiment on you? Let them. They pushed for it. Margaret was always talking about how we were helping science advance. Robert just cared about the checks they got every month. Last week, Carmen came over. She's this investigative journalist who's been my best friend since college. When I told her about my health problems and the childhood experiments, her eyes lit up like she'd found a gold mine. Finley, this sounds like a story I need to investigate. Do you have any documentation from back then? I don't think so. My parents handled everything. Medical records, consent forms, payment receipts. There has to be something. That same day, I called Dr. Sarah Chen. She used to work for pharmaceutical companies before becoming a whistleblower. When I explained my situation over the phone, she got really quiet. How old did you say you were when this started? 12? And your parents received payments? Yeah, monthly checks, sometimes bonuses when I completed certain phases. Finley, what you're describing sounds like exploitation. Medical research on minors requires extremely strict protocols. Even Aunt Linda, my mom's sister, admitted something was off when I called her yesterday. Your mother always said you were helping pay for the house, but I wondered why they needed a kid to do medical studies. Did you ever question it? Honey, your parents seemed so sure it was the right thing. Margaret kept saying the doctors promised it was completely safe. The headaches hit me again last night, along with the joint pain that never really goes away. That's when I decided to drive over to my parents' house. They were at Robert's poker night, so I used my old key. Their attic was full of boxes I'd never seen before. Buried underneath Christmas decorations and old tax returns, I found a manila envelope with my name on it. Inside were medical documents, consent forms, and deposit slips dating back 15 years. The papers showed payments totaling over $40,000. My parents had literally sold access to my body when I was just a kid. I spread the documents across my parents' kitchen table and called Carmen immediately. You need to get over here right now. I found everything. 20 minutes later, Carmen walked in with her laptop and a stack of legal pads. Dr. Chen arrived 30 minutes after that, carrying a briefcase full of medical journals. Holy crap, Finley. Look at this deposit slip from March 2011. $1,500 for what they're calling Phase 3 neural response testing. Dr. Chen picked up one of the consent forms and her face went pale. This is from MedTech Solutions. I know this company. They were shut down by the FDA 3 years ago for conducting unauthorized trials. What kind of unauthorized trials? Experimental neurological drugs on minors. Several kids ended up with permanent brain damage. Carmen was already typing furiously on her laptop. I'm pulling up everything I can find on MedTech. Look at this. They paid families up to $50,000 to enroll children in studies that hadn't been approved for pediatric use. So my parents basically sold me to these people? Worse than that. According to these medical notes, you were given compounds that were still in animal testing phases. I heard my parents' car pulling into the driveway. Carmen and Dr. Chen quickly gathered the documents while I stuffed everything back into the envelope. Finley, what are you doing here? Margaret walked into the kitchen. followed by Robert, who was still holding his poker chips. I found some interesting paperwork in your attic. What paperwork? I slammed the envelope down on the counter. $43,000, Mom. That's how much MedTech Solutions paid you to let them experiment on me. Robert stepped forward, his face turning red. You had no right going through our personal belongings. Personal belongings? These are medical records with my name on them. We needed the money, Finley. Your father was out of work for 8 months. We were about to lose the house. So you decided to use your 12-year-old daughter as a lab rat? You were helping science advance. The doctors explained everything to us. Dr. Chen pulled out her phone. Mrs. Margaret, I'm a medical professional. The company that paid you was conducting illegal experiments on children. That's not true. Dr. Harrison assured us the studies were completely safe. Dr. Harrison lost his medical license in 2018 for falsifying safety data. Robert grabbed the envelope. This conversation is over. You need to leave our house. Dad, they gave me drugs that hadn't been tested on humans. I have permanent neurological damage because of what you let them do. The doctors said there might be minor side effects. Minor? I have tremors, chronic headaches, and joint pain that will never go away. Margaret started crying. We thought we were doing the right thing. The money helped us keep this roof over your head. You kept the roof over your heads. I paid for it with my health. Carmen had been quietly recording everything on her phone. Mr. Robert, are you saying you knew there were risks involved? Of course we knew there were risks. Every medical procedure has risks. But you enrolled your daughter anyway because you needed the money? Look, we weren't the only family doing this. Dr. Harrison had dozens of kids in the program. I turned my phone's recorder on and slipped it into my pocket. This conversation wasn't over. 2 weeks later, I called my parents and suggested we have a family dinner to work things out. Margaret was thrilled, thinking I was ready to forgive and forget. I'll make your favorite pot roast, sweetheart. We can put all this unpleasantness behind us. I invited Aunt Linda, too, knowing she'd feel comfortable enough to speak freely. Jake came along for support, and I had my phone recording in my purse the entire time. Linda, you remember when Finley was doing those medical studies, right? Oh, yes. You two were so proud of her contribution to science. Robert carved the roast while talking. We helped Dr. Harrison recruit 3 other families from the neighborhood. The Johnsons, the Millers, and that single mom, Sarah, from Oak Street. You got other kids involved? Of course. Dr. Harrison gave us bonuses for referrals, $500 for each family we brought in. Margaret nodded enthusiastically. We made sure to only recommend families who really needed the money. Aunt Linda looked uncomfortable. I always wondered why you suddenly had money for that new truck. The program was expanding rapidly. Dr. Harrison said they needed more participants for the advanced phases. Jake shifted in his seat. Advanced phases of what exactly? More intensive testing. Finley was one of their best subjects because she rarely complained about the procedures. The next morning, Dr. Chen called with explosive news. Finley, I got my hands on the actual consent forms your parents signed. They're completely falsified. What do you mean? The side effects section lists mild fatigue and temporary discomfort. The real clinical data shows seizures, permanent neurological damage, and cognitive impairment in 30% of subjects. Carmen burst through my apartment door an hour later, waving a thick stack of papers. MedTech Solutions is under federal investigation. The FBI raided their offices last month. They're looking for families who participated in their illegal trials. Are you serious? Dead serious. I've been in contact with Agent Rodriguez from the Federal Bureau. They want to talk to you. That evening, I arranged another family dinner. This time, Aunt Linda brought her husband, Tom, and I made sure everyone was comfortable before dropping the bomb. I've been recording our conversations for the past 2 weeks. Margaret dropped her fork. What? Every word, including your admission that you recruited other families for money and knew there were serious risks involved. Finley, you can't do this to us. Robert stood up, his face turning purple. Delete those recordings right now. Too late. I already submitted everything to the FBI this afternoon. Aunt Linda grabbed Margaret's arm. Maybe you should get a lawyer. Don't take her side, Linda. We're family. Jake put his hand on my shoulder. She's doing the right thing. This is betrayal, Finley, after everything we sacrificed for you. You didn't sacrifice anything. You sold me. Tom looked around the table nervously. Maybe we should leave. Agent Rodriguez will be contacting everyone mentioned in the recordings. That includes all the families you recruited. Margaret started sobbing. We never meant for you to get hurt. But you did it anyway. 3 months later, Agent Rodriguez called me with the news I'd been waiting for. Finley, we're filing federal charges against your parents tomorrow. Child endangerment, conspiracy to commit fraud, and accepting payment for illegal human experimentation. What kind of sentence are we looking at? 5 to 10 years each, plus substantial fines. The local newspaper ran the story the following week. Carmen made sure it hit the front page with the headline, Local couple sold daughter to illegal medical experiments. Margaret called me crying the day after the article came out. I lost my job at the elementary school. The principal said parents are demanding I be removed from campus. Maybe you should have thought about that before you sold me to those doctors. The school board won't even let me resign quietly. They're making a public statement about my termination. Robert's construction business collapsed within 2 weeks. His phone kept ringing, but not with job offers. Finley, please. My clients are canceling contracts left and right. The Hendersons fired me from their kitchen renovation yesterday. What did they say? That they can't trust someone who would experiment on their own kid with their home project? Jake and I were having dinner when Aunt Linda called to deliver more bad news for my parents. Finley, I can't be associated with Margaret and Robert anymore. Tom's worried about his reputation at the bank. So you're cutting them off? The whole family's talking. Uncle Steve won't even let them come to Christmas dinner this year. Good. They made their choices. The civil lawsuit took 8 months, but Dr. Chen testified as an expert witness about the permanent damage caused by the experimental drugs. Finley, the jury awarded you $2.3 million in damages. That's more than I expected. The judge was particularly angry about your parents' role in recruiting other families. My lawyer, Jennifer, explained how the money would be structured. $1.5 million for medical expenses and pain and suffering. $800,000 in punitive damages specifically tied to your parents' actions. I used half the settlement money to start a foundation helping other victims of illegal medical experimentation. Carmen wrote a follow-up article about my advocacy work. Finley's foundation has already connected 12 families with legal representation. It feels good turning this nightmare into something positive. Margaret and Robert were sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. The day before they reported to serve their time, Margaret called one last time. Finley, please visit us. We're still your parents. No, you're not. Parents protect their children. You sold me. We're sorry for everything. Sorry doesn't fix my tremors or my chronic pain. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive us? I found it in my heart to make sure you face consequences. Jake held my hand as I hung up the phone. Carmen was working on a book about medical exploitation of children. Dr. Chen had joined my foundation's medical advisory board. My parents lost everything: their freedom, their reputation, their family, and their community. I built something meaningful from the wreckage they created. They chose money over my well-being. I chose justice over their comfort. Here's what I want to know. Do you think Finley went too far? Her parents lost their freedom, their jobs, their family relationships, and their entire community standing. Yeah, they sold her body to illegal medical experiments for money, but they were facing foreclosure and claimed they thought it was safe. Was 7 years in prison plus complete social destruction the right consequence? Or should she have shown mercy when they apologized and said they were desperate? Some of you might say family is family no matter what. Others will argue that parents who exploit their own children deserve whatever they get. But here's the really controversial part. Finley recorded private family conversations and turned them over to federal agents. She deliberately set traps to get evidence against her own parents. Does being a victim give you the right to become the hunter? Where's the line between justice and revenge? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely want to hear both sides of this debate. Are you Team Finley, or do you think she crossed a line? If this story got your blood pumping and you want more revenge tales where victims actually win, smash that like button and subscribe for weekly stories that'll make you question everything about loyalty, family, and justice.